Hi, I'm Brenton, and today let's talk about character backstories and development. I recently read a novel, and while it could have been good, one of the characters really torpedoed the entire book and made me despise it so much that I was inspired to write my own version the way it should have been made. That is how Honor Card for Ruin, which is currently in pre order, came to be. In what I'm going to call the crap version, the one someone else wrote, the main character is returning from life as a soldier. But when he goes back to his hometown, he finds it in desperate need of help. Kind of like the movie Walking Tall with The Rock, if you've ever seen it, except this is a medieval fantasy version. Now in this crap version, the main character is mostly thought through, with the background and motivation, some scars, etc., etc., etc. However, the supporting characters are not. Like the main character meets a woman on the road who's being accosted by bandits, pretty classic damsel in distress style trope, which is fine in my opinion. I know it can be overused, but I still think for certain audiences it can work. The problem was that the damsel in this case was not a real person with a real reason for being out in bandit infested woods. She was basically just a prop, a pawn for the main character, and this is exactly what you should avoid with this trope. You can't have the woman exist solely to further the man's story. She needs to have her own story. Even worse, in this craptastic book, the woman's personality is just a caricature where she just like fawns all over this guy immediately with no real reason. It was stupid. It was cringeworthy. I mean, it was just really, really bad. So what could the author have done differently? Well, in my version, which I like to think is not crap, I thought through why a woman would even need rescuing. What was she doing? Why was she doing it? And more, like, why is she alone in the woods surrounded by bandits? I mean, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless, she's secretly way more able to defend herself, like Wonder Woman or something. But in both my version and the crap version, she's not. So we really need to think through that why this scene exists, you know, other than just to demonstrate how much of a badass our main character is. So I thought through and I set the scene a little differently. Instead of just wandering through the woods blindly like a moron, she is inside a bounty cart along with a collection of other ruffians and criminals that have been rounded up. And now this adds a new layer of intrigue to the story. Like, well, it's not just classic damsel in distress. The main character is wondering, well, I mean, is she really in distress? Does she really need to be saved? You know, should she be saved? Like maybe she's one of them. What is her story? It's not just, help me, brave knight. There's clearly more going on. I also thought through her motivations and her own background, so she's her own story arc and growth, independent of the main character. Now, I'm not perfect when it comes to this stuff. Sometimes my characters might seem flat or cliched or, whatever, but I can confidently say that I write something that most people would not look at and immediately think it is total crap. And if you don't believe me, you can see for yourself by reading Honor Card for Ruin, which is available on Amazon Kindle and Barnes & Noble. Just go to my website, brentonlillyauthor.com, and click on your preferred retailer. And don't forget to sign up for my newsletter.